For those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Michael Goldberg, and I'm our Executive Director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship here at Case Western Reserve, and I also am a professor at Weatherhead, which is where I am right now in my office. It's wonderful to partner with our friends at Venture for America and our friends at the Social Justice Institute here on campus and our friends at University Circle, Inc. For this series, our Hough neighborhood series. This is the third installment for those who missed the first two. We have them on video, so you can check out our LinkedIn site. You can check out the videos. On Monday, we had a great discussion really on the history of Hough, and led in on Tuesday to a discussion with some local entrepreneurs about the community and where the challenges were and where opportunities lay ahead. And today's focus is on community development. The one constant we've had is our student moderator and my student and friend, Darrell Butler, who is finishing his senior year in December, in the strange year that is 2020. Darrell is part of our Cleveland Humanities Collaborative program, which is a wonderful program funded by the Mellon Foundation, which students like Darrell that attended their first 2 years at Tri-C and then came and joined us at Case for his last 2 years. So it's been great that Darrell's been moderating these sessions and make all the students do the work, which is always my strategy. So with that, I will turn it over to Darrell. We hope that these are really interactive. So for those that are on Zoom, and Aisha's here. Hey, Aisha, thanks for being such a great partner in this series. As I was saying, just put your questions in Zoom or raise your hand or your virtual hand. And if you're on LinkedIn Live, just put a comment in the box, and Doug DiGirolamo and I will be monitoring, so we will get your questions in. So with that, let me turn it over to Darrell.
Thank you very much. Just making sure I wasn't on mute there. All right, so welcome back to our series on entrepreneurship in the Hough neighborhood. My name is Darrell Butler, and I am a senior history major here at Case Western Reserve, as you've been told. And this is session number 3 of 3. So today we are going to discuss the community development portion of our series. And so we have a panel today. We have 4 different guests. And so what I would like to do, I'm just going to go ahead and let you all sort of individually introduce yourselves. Tell us what organization you work with and what projects you're working on currently. And we'll go from there. So why don't we go ahead and start with Greg, if we could.
Excellent. We can do that. Hi, everybody. First of all, just thanks for inviting me to be a part of the conversation. I appreciate it very much. I'm the Community Education Director for University Circle Incorporated. Although I taught for 21 years in public schools, actually a social studies teacher, and I actually connected a lot with an organization. Actually, it was just in Cleveland.com, the Executive Director of Facing History and Ourselves, who wrote a great piece about the importance of the 1619 Project. But that sort of inspired me to get involved in what I'm now doing, community education. So our team connects about 11,000 learners to sort of the wonders of the circle every year. And in particular, we've set up a focus school network of neighborhood schools in neighborhoods right around University Circle to go deeply with the kids, their families, and the schools to be able to provide enrichment activities and experiences in ways that sort of suit the family. So working hard to do that. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we could move on to Khrys, please. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Khrys Shefton. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for Famicos Foundation. Famicos serves as the Community Development Corporation for the Glenville, Hough, and St. Clair Superior neighborhoods. I've been with the organization for 6 years. I'm a graduate of the Masters of Urban Planning Design and Development program at Cleveland State University. So I'm a planner by trade. And thank you so much for inviting me and having me to participate as a part of the conversation.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to Joyce, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joyce Huang. I'm the Vice President of Community Development at Midtown Cleveland Incorporated. And so we are a community and economic development organization for the Midtown neighborhood, just south of the Hough neighborhood. And so if you're thinking east-west, we're between downtown and the Fairfax and University Circle neighborhoods. So we're sort of right in the middle. I am also a graduate of the CSU Live-In program in the Master of Urban Planning program, like Khrys. And how we intersect with Hough is, well, first of all, we are in Ward 7, and including our Asiatown community. And most significantly and recently, we've worked on an effort along East 66th Street, which is a corridor that connects the Midtown neighborhood and the Hough neighborhood. Traditionally and historically, we've been a commercial corridor, and now we are rethinking our identity about what it really means to be a neighborhood, and what does it mean for people to work, live, and play, but also what does it mean for us to be an inclusive neighborhood? What does it mean to practice racial equity in our practices as a historically white area with commercial and business owners? So that's a little bit about me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much. And finally, our final panelist, Councilman Jones, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
What's going on? What's going on? I'm very happy to be here with you all. Very excited to talk about anything to do with development of buildings, but more importantly, development of people. So I'm really blessed, man, to have amazing people working in the neighborhood, like Khrys Shefton of Famicos and like Joyce over at Midtown. And we've really had the opportunity to do some amazing, amazing things since I've been in office. Been here for going on 4 years, graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And actually, I'll have my master's next year from Claremont School of Theology. So I'm really excited about that. So very thankful to be here with you all, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Okay, and like Michael said in the very beginning, if anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to place them in the chat. And as the moments come about, I will call on you to ask your question. So I'll go ahead and start it off. And I'm going to kind of make a reference back to our 2 previous conversations this week, because I thought that something very important came up in these conversations. And one of them, so the question was whether or not, at first, that whether or not Hough was a food desert or not. But through that conversation came up that the real issue wasn't so much of it being a food desert, but there are issues in transportation in the Hough neighborhood of how people get access to grocery stores or pharmacies and things like that. So I wanted to ask this question because I think that several of our panelists might have some good input regarding the issues of transportation. So I don't know, Councilman Jones, you might maybe have something to say about that.
So you're asking if there's a food desert?
Well, so not so much that. Let me rephrase that. I apologize. So we kind of had a differing opinion. Some people thought that that Hough is a food desert, or that there's issues with getting to a drugstore. Some other people disagreed and said that there's plenty of access to these places, but there's not access to transportation to get there. And so we had a discussion that went into transportation becoming a very big issue in Hough and probably similar neighborhoods. So that's more or less where I'm going. Do you see an issue with transportation?
Oh, of course. Yeah. You know, crime doesn't, you know, many times when people think about, you know, crime in predominantly Black community, we always look at crime as bullets leaving guns, or, you know, people being buried. But it's an absolute crime, the transportation issue. It's an absolute crime around the fact that we don't have these places that has a free access to fresh fruits. This is also a crime. It's a crime that we have neighborhoods where the lead is actually in the soil because of political can you close that door for me, brother? Thank you. Because of politics, where there was a point in time where when people knocked down homes, they would actually put the homes into the ground, right? So, you know, what impact does this have? What impact does this have on the people that live there, right? And I think I really want people to understand that. I would love to be able to see a study on how many inmates from our community have been affected by lead and what impact that had on them. I would really like to get that type of study. So it's very important that we have that conversation, man. I think you're absolutely right, without a doubt. That's there, but I just want people to, somebody said to me the other day, you know, it's crabs in a bucket. Crabs in a bucket. Now I asked the question, well, the natural state of crabs is not to be in a bucket. So who created the bucket? Who created the environment that the crime exists in, right? Because when I see crabs on a beach with an ocean of opportunities, I don't see crabs pulling each other. But if you see crabs in a bucket where their resources and opportunities are restricted, then they're going to do what any creation of God will do, and that is to do their best to survive. So, you know, institutions like Case Western Reserve and Cleveland Clinic and these anchoring institutions has to understand what part that they may be playing, unintentionally now, maybe intentionally in the past. What part are they playing in this crime against humanity? Yeah.
Thank you. I also, Ms. Shefton there, I saw you acknowledging much of what Councilman Jones had said, so I didn't know if you wanted to add a comment there.
I just, I'm always mesmerized when the councilman speaks, but for as much as, particularly for those of us who happen to be Black, have heard the whole analogy of crabs in a barrel. That's the first time I've ever heard it spoken in that way. Like, but they're not supposed to be in a bucket. They're not supposed to be in a barrel. That, like, yeah. So that was just very eye-opening comment. But I mean, to the specific points of transportation, I mean, across the city of Cleveland, we know that the RTA has been hit with constant budget cuts, and that those cuts primarily impact people of color, and particularly on the east side of Cleveland. It's further interesting, to the councilman's point, with all the institutions and jobs located literally surrounding University Circle, that you would have those sorts of transportation issues. And so it just really goes to show, and I think it's a larger sort of conversation to be had about the intentionality of some of the things that are happening in our city and just more in the United States more broadly. If you really want me to have a job, if you really want me to be out of poverty, then you should be creating opportunities for me to get out of poverty. That's not a program. That's the creation of infrastructure that allows for that. And so that is what's truly missing here. Everybody wants to do a program. I got some money, I got 100 grand, let's do a program. It's not about program. It's about fixing the overall infrastructure that impacts our city so that we can all be able to do what is most basic, right? Which is survive, which is to be able to feed our family, which is be able to, you know, go visit loved ones. And so if those are sort of the basics and we as a city aren't providing the basics, then how can we expect our people to thrive?
I'd love to jump in too, just to piggyback off of what Councilman Jones and Khrys have both said. And I think certainly, you know, transportation is an issue. Access possibly is an issue. But I think those are also just symptoms of a larger problem that exists, which is that there are policies that have been race-based that impact communities like Hough that have been going on for and evolving constantly since the beginning of Europeans coming to North America. But I think like, especially in the 1900s, there are a lot of policies like redlining, if you're familiar with that, that have actually impacted the amount of investment that goes into communities like Hough. So maybe the question is not access to grocery stores, but why isn't there a full-fledged grocery store in the Hough community itself, right in the middle of the neighborhood? And that's because there have been policies that disincentivize investments like that in neighborhoods, right? And you look at where all the grocery stores are, you have to ask the question. So I'm certain the other panelists have a lot more to say about that, but I wanted to raise that as a sort of as a starting point, that certain things are symptoms of a larger problem that our society.
To Chris's point, you can talk about programs, you can get funding for programs, and that's what we do at UCI. And I think that her point is spot on. What we do, we're lucky enough to have some school buses that provide support for some of our neighborhood institutions like Rainey or some of the schools. So we'll go and pick up the kids to take them into the circle, and that's been going on for decades, and we're glad to do it. But I think, to Chris's point, that pales in comparison to the larger structural inequities. And so where we intersect, where I specifically intersect, is in educational enrichment. But you're talking about so many barriers to that, to so many aspects of a fully lived life. So that the comments that have been made to me are powerful and important.
Thank you. So speaking of which, since all four of you kind of mentioned, well, I'll go to this point. So something that we have talked about, we talked about this on Tuesday, and I think this might be relevant here, talking about these large institutions that are within Hough, such as the Cleveland Clinic. So how do any of your organizations, are they allies with your organizations? Have you been able to leverage anything to say, hey, our organization is doing this, you guys are here, how can you help us? What is the relationship that any of you have with these large institutions in Hough?
Well, as a councilman, we have some good relations. And I want to say, Brother Darrell, this is a conversation. We didn't come here to play games, right? We having truthful conversation, right?
Speak your truth, please.
Okay. I didn't see everybody shake their heads, but I'm hoping that we can be truthful, because that's the only way that we're going to truly make the change that's necessary. As I said earlier about intentional and unintentional, I think now these institutions have some really good intentions. I do believe that. They have very good intentions. But what's necessary is to connect with the people that's on the ground who is doing the work and being able to work with them. When I had when I was to meet with Dr. Mihailovich, who was the CEO of the clinic, we were initially going to meet in his office, but instead I said, let's meet on Hough. Let's take a walk on Hough. And this guy is a really great guy. I mean, Cleveland is really blessed to have him, man. He's very cultured, very loving, very understanding. And we walked Hough, man. We walked Hough. And there's certain things that I asked from him. I asked him, I would love to see Cleveland Clinic spend more money with minority businesses. He's spending a lot of money. Let's one contract to a business could change the legacy, the trajectory of their entire family, right? I want to create this portal where we know at any point in time how many residents from Ward 7 work for Cleveland Clinic. I want to create a stronger internship program where young people from my neighborhood are not, with all due respect, are not just becoming STNAs, but we are also preparing them to become doctors and dentists, right? And so forth and so on. We're not just teaching them to draw blood, right? We're teaching them to fix hearts. You get what I mean? So we are creating this internship program with young people to begin to educate our community at a much younger age so that they can have a love for medicine. We are, I would argue, one of the health capitals of the world with Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital. So I asked University Hospital, let's do a town hall. I was one of the co-sponsors of declaring racism a public health crisis. Right, so now you're seeing different institutions doing the same thing. But what does it matter when upper management does not look like or reflect the people of the community? When we don't have enough women in higher positions, we don't have enough people of color in these upper management positions, right? How are we spending our resources? How can we be fighting infant mortality and not working with the Christian farmer? I mean, these are people that are on the ground. You have to have people who speak the language of the people, right? You know, Ward 7 is also home to a very diverse Asian community, right? So we have amazing people like Joyce and others who are not just brilliant, but also represent that community so that that community feels more comfortable with them and what's going on. So in my closing, I believe that the institutions, especially the time that we're in, I believe that these institutions want to do better. I really believe that. In my heart, I believe that. Others may not. I've sat down with these people and they have a heart for community. But the question is, are you working with the right people? Are you sitting down with the experts? I'm not talking about experts in because you have a degree. Because I know people who didn't even finish high school and they're brilliant, right? So connecting there. So to answer your question, Darrell, I believe that Cleveland is in a very special time. We have to become a city that we are not a brain drain, where people like yourselves who get their masters and get their PhDs don't feel like they have to take their talents to Miami and take their talents to California, right? With the Cleveland Clinic here and other institutions, there's no reason why these brilliant young people who are graduating from some of the top universities in the country should not keep their brilliance in Cleveland. But if there's no opportunities here, they're not. So that's what these institutions can help us do. They can help us provide opportunities. We need to see more young people in position. Cleveland suffers from succession planning, the lack of. That we step on the caterpillars and complain that there's not enough butterflies. We cut their wings off of the baby eagles as if the sky is not large enough for everybody to fly. And I can sadly say that we live in a city that's majority Black and elected officials are majority Black and the majority of the suffering are Black people. So we see that Blackness is not sufficient in progress. It talks about we have to have a consciousness of humanity. And what's happening in the city of Cleveland, what's happening to Black babies and Black mothers, what's happening to people of color, it should affect every last one of us. And until you feel that pain, until it bothers you, whether you call yourself, I'm not a racist or not, if it does not move your heart to what's happening to Black and brown people in this country, then you, my friend, are a part of the problem, even though it is unintentional. Very important.
Thank you. I'm curious, Joyce, if you had, I'm curious to know about Midtown's relationship with any of these institutions.
Sure. It's always hard to follow Councilman Jones because I'm like, he like captured everything. But just in terms of Midtown as a neighborhood, well, we do have the University Hospital's Rainbow Center in our neighborhood, which is essentially a decamped clinic from the University Circle location of University Hospital. So they intentionally made the move to be closer to neighborhoods and less in sort of an institutional buffer, to be closer to, you know, one of the most devastating and disturbing issues in our neighborhoods, which is infant mortality. And so we we are friends with university hospitals, especially the Rainbow Center there, and continue to really think through what does health and wellness look like. So for example, as part of that program and as part of them moving to the neighborhood, they have a partnership with Dave's Dave's Market. They have a teaching kitchen that is a program that has chefs and nutritionists and dietitians working on the ground with folks to provide healthy meal planning and demonstrations. And I think another interesting project that's coming down the line, and Councilman Jones can also comment on this too, is the innovation community that was just announced last week along 66th Street. The idea of having an innovation community that is literally halfway between Cleveland State University and Case Western Reserve University is to really take sort of the best of both of those places, these like really important institutions in Cleveland, to decant them from their sort of institutional barriers, to bring them into a separate space, maybe like a third space where other corporate members can have business offices there. But not only that it would be more accessible to community members with a broader definition of what innovation is. Because often we think about innovation squarely in sort of what's tech, what's the next app, what is that kind of buzz in the innovation economy? And I think for us, we're really trying to blow open what that definition means, because innovation, as we know, is any solution to a problem. And there is a lot of innovation and a lot of innovators in the Hough community. And it's just that they're not tied into the actual innovation economy itself. And it might look different. It could be innovations in lifestyle, right? It could be innovations in technology. It could be innovations in food and small business. And so I think we are really trying to think through that along with those institutional partners like Case and Cleveland State. So what would it look like to have a community of all of these representatives of innovators? I will say, and just as a last note, is that we don't interact much with the Cleveland Clinic. They technically aren't really in our service area. They're technically in the Fairfax area. So we do get that question a lot about the clinic. But I will leave it at that with the innovation discussion.
Thank you.
So some of the work that we've been doing in University Circle, Darrell, is, so I work with the education teams, which you might have heard at the CMA. It was announced 40 layoffs. So many of the layoffs that have been happening in many of the Circle institutions are with the education teams. So as you can imagine, a lot of challenges in the pandemic era. But, so a lot of education programs exist in the Circle. And I think to Councilman Jones's point, the importance of being connected to, especially our neighborhoods, to us in the UCI Community Education Department is essential. So even though like every one of those institutions, University Circle, they have to pay the bills. They need to get as many people as possible to get into those institutions. But the work where we like to interface and think it's absolutely essential is to work with the education teams in a spirit of equity to say, what are we doing in our neighborhoods? And how are we being present in the school, the neighborhood schools, with the neighborhood parents of the kids in the schools? And in what ways can we offer opportunities of deepening a connection to community? So we're talking after school programs, summer enrichment programs. So, in the education world, the education teams and their directors are very committed to sort of the work, especially in our neighborhoods. And I think that, there are a lot of internal conversations with a lot of those institutions about the place of equity and how to move forward in a thoughtful way that does everything that Councilman was saying, which is to take into account and to be present with the neighbors around the Circle. So it's a key sort of world that we're in, but it's mainly about really connecting the families and the kids in ways that deepen that connection. And also respect, where everyone's coming from, because of how important that is in terms of making those deep connections with families in school communities.
Thank you. Khrys, did you have a comment on that?
Sure. So one of the things that we do at Famicos through our community building and engagement department is that we do a ton of work with the health institutions, particularly UH and the Cleveland Clinic. One of the things that we most often participate in is that the clinic runs a 6-week challenge, and the focus of which is to get residents thinking about health and their health and wellness, and so puts them through challenges in terms of healthy eating and exercise. And really our commitment internally is around healthy food. So we typically run, when it's not COVID, a farmer's market. We do a lot of work in terms of scheduled Zoom classes, Zumba, and other sorts of active opportunities for residents to be able to get out in their neighborhoods and just be active. Right now, one of the things that we're very committed to is green space. There's lots of research that suggests that people of color could benefit the most from green space because it brings down cortisol levels. And so we've been working and very intentionally partnering with UCI around Rockefeller Park, amongst some other things that are going on. And so health and wellness is a true commitment, I can say that, of our organization. All that to say this, it's programs again. It was like back to the same point. It's a program. It's a thing that's funded for a finite period of time. And I mean, the headline from a community development standpoint, and this is just my opinion, is that the system of community development has to change. As a graduate of Levin, I've said this to my peers, I've said this to folks who run that college, like, it has to change. It doesn't work. I was put on this planet to be a planner. I know that. That's what God created me to be. And so I have spent a lot of time over the last 7 months, honestly questioning my profession, because I don't know that for all the things that I know, for all the work that I've put in, and for the giants of the shoulders that I stand on, what do we have to show for all of that effort, all of that commitment, all of the money that has been spent, until we are in a place where we can look at these systems and go, this does not work and it does not serve us and we must change it. We have to change this system. It's just lipstick on a pig.
Thank you very much. We do have a question from the audience. So Michelle Cruz, if you'd like to unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, okay. I put it in the chat, so let me see if I can go back and read it.
I can ask it for you if you'd like to.
No, I have it. I wanted to know, and I think this kind of touches on what the last panelist just said, which is, how is the local community brought in? Especially, so there's two kind of questions to this, is there in the innovation work, maybe, are there paid or high school level internships, technical or training for adults, or outreach to middle schools set up? Obviously COVID is a thing right now. But I guess the second part to that, which may be more relevant, is do Case Western, Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland State have hiring programs in effect that would hire from the local community or not? And if they do, do they make an effort to, for example, ban the box, which unintentionally maybe discriminates from people who may have a criminal history, or intentionally maybe discriminates against people who have a criminal history in their hiring?
Michelle, that's a beautiful question. And
I appreciate that it's really long and complex. So if you need me to rephrase it, I can also rephrase it.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's a beautiful question. I guess my pause came in because I'm trying to figure out, we can always appreciate what people have done, but you also know that people can do much more. And, I've been in office now for, going on 4 years. And the thing that we have been able to accomplish, some of it is timing, right? I mean, besides downtown, Ward 7 is the hottest area of development in the entire city. but it has a lot to do with leadership. Who are the leaders that are in place? So as I said in my chat, and I'm really blessed to have Khrys and have Joyce, who are conscious and they love the community and they are in a position to do something about it. So I'm coming to your question, but I just want to give a broader perspective that we have to have people in position who are courageous enough to do what they know needs to be done. And unfortunately, in our city, you've had people who have been elected, and I'm just speaking from the elected official perspective, who have been in position, but they have not, excuse my wording, they have not made anyone do anything. And what I mean by that is, right now we are approaching close to $400 million of development in Ward 7. And what I tell people is, we want you to be a good neighbor. Just like State Farm, right? We want you to be a good neighbor, right? So are you a good neighbor? Because developing buildings is one thing, but are you going to help us develop people? That's a different conversation. I mean, right now we just brought in a new organization called Cross Country Mortgage, and they're going to be spending close to $60 million of investment, bringing close to 500 jobs into the neighborhood. Well, the first question I asked them was, that's cool, but I'm trying to increase home ownership in my neighborhood. Can you assist me with that? Can you help me increase home ownership among the people who live in this neighborhood? It's one thing about doing tax abatements, but what about the people who have been in their homes who also need resources? You know, when they want to, we have 2 brand new hotels. When I met with the Residence Inn, the first thing I said to them is, will you have people who are from this neighborhood in upper management? Right? So being an elected official, if the elected official is not about community, then it's easy to be okay with a new business coming in, but you got to make sure it's tied to the community. So when I think about Case Western Reserve, one of the first things I said to them when I got a chance to meet with Dr. Snyder, with all due respect to everyone on here, it's a travesty that you have such a small percentage of people from this neighborhood attending Case Western Reserve. I grew up in Hough, and when I went to Case Western, when I used to walk around Case, I didn't feel like that was my neighborhood. I felt like it was a totally different place, and which is okay visually, but socially we should feel that this is just another part of our neighborhood. So Dr. Snyder, they have this beautiful program now with the school district called the Say Yes program, where now if you get accepted to Case Western Reserve, you can go there for free. And as I expressed to her, with all these museums, so for UCI, right, this is my guy Gregory over there, like it's important that we have these world-class museums, but how are they connected to the local schools? Right? So just imagine you have this world-class art museum. Imagine right around the corner at Daniel E. Morgan, there's a mini art museum that the kids can feel connected to. Or you have this natural history museum. Imagine over there at, Case Elementary, which is closed now, but there was a mini natural history museum, right? So, and as I told the chief of police, we need to start young. The community and police right now are clashing. How do you change that narrative? You change it by working with young people and getting them involved at an early age so that they can begin to look at our amazing police, because we have more great police officers than we have bad, right? So that they can begin to look at it in a different way. So I close with saying every institution can do more. And if there are internships and paid internships, I'm not aware of it. And as the councilman, I should be. If there are some internships with Cleveland State, they do give a scholarship to students, 2 scholarships a year to students from around that neighborhood. But if you and I were to take a look at Case Western Reserve and Cleveland State and their numbers of how many people from the neighborhood attend these schools, you and I both would be very disappointed at those numbers. So if we're not educating the people in our neighborhood, not giving them an opportunity, not exposing them, You know, when I was younger, I thought there's no way I thought I could attend Case Western Reserve. And young people from the neighborhood should not feel that way. And the question is, how much of that is their own perspective of themselves, and how much of that is a perspective that's placed upon them?
Councilman, I really appreciate your sentiments, and I think it's, your comments are so important, but also even, you know, you were saying you're not aware of some, you know, paid internships. We do have actually at UCI, we have a high school paid internship program for about 50 kids, which is really great. We surround them with life skills workshops, financial literacy, resume writing, interview skills, all of that. So we think that's really important. It's for mainly juniors and seniors in high school. But I agree with you, getting to kids young, and for me, I'm absolutely motivated to make sure that like our young kids feel exactly what you didn't feel, like that place wasn't for you. And that like, so we created an after school program called Circle Scholars, and it's twice a week, and we're getting, and it's all middle school. We're just having kids in and out of the circle, getting to know not only like why the institutions are cool, but even like some career oriented stuff. How does an institution like this, how does it function? What does a marketing director do? What does a curator do? You know, that sort of stuff. So I totally agree. And I would even take your vision further, Councilman, to say, imagine the neighborhood schools being so intertwined with these institutions that teachers are using UCI buses in and out. And these are essentially like extension schools of the wonders of what's going on. And that means working with the educators and the institutions. That means also encouraging those institutions to say, hey, when kids come in here, it's not this shut up and sit down. This is a place of wonderment. This is your place. And so I couldn't agree with you more. And we're moving, especially in UCI, into the after school and the summer experience program. Like that space, that's like perfect for us because it serves the institutions. And the most important piece is it serves really what our parents are saying, which is after school enrichment programs, especially for middle school kids, they'd be perfect. So we're actually also working with CASE and trying to develop a health services extracurricular where kids would learn about medical school. And we're developing it in partnership with Case Western Reserve in our 6 focus schools. So anyway, so I couldn't agree more with you, Councilman. I think it's so key.
And that's what I'm saying. There's people like, Gregory, is that okay if I call you Greg? Is that okay? There's people like Greg. There's people out here that truly want to make the change. And I think that we're so polarized in this country that we think that a person has to be from the hood to understand. Like, no, struggle is a part of the human condition. We all got issues. Every person that's on this thing got issues. And if you say you don't, lying is your issue. So we all going through something. We all trying to figure this thing out. And as a city, if those who are educated, right, educated in the sense of, you know, the structural education or whatever, if we're not the ones that is open to change and open to, I always tell my students, like why, you know, one of the parents asked me, why does the young people want to be rappers? I say, because they're the ones that look so happy. I mean, look at the videos. They're the ones that look happy. When you see teachers, lawyers, and judges, and they look stressed out. Who in the world would want to be a teacher when they, even though they have this such an important, you know, role to play in society, why would they want to be that? So we have to make being educated cool. We have to make standing up for greatness cool. We have to do that, and we have to stand together. And it has to be a multicultural effort. It has to be. And it's people like myself who are in positions of power. We have to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable and that we are not afraid to speak truth to power, that we're not afraid to say structural racism, right? Because this is a real thing. It exists. We can't be afraid of that. And that can't just come out of the mouth of, that can't just be out of the mouth of black mouths. This has to be out of the mouth of all people. Because if we can uplift a community that continues to be marginalized, then we're gonna also uplift our brothers and sisters of our Hispanic brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, our LGBTQ community brothers and sisters, our so forth and so on. We have to uplift everyone. And when we do that, we'll be successful.
Can I add one thing to Councilman's? I think your point that really resonates with me is this idea about being educated. And I'm reminded of my being in a school parent organization meeting. And sometimes when I go into the meetings, like I'm presenting or I'm saying some whatever. And one time I was at, it was in Wade Park School, and a woman was like, well, don't you have something to say? You normally, will be presenting. And I said, no, I'm just here to be. And I'm just here to figure out ways that, we can support your work. And she said, yeah, but you're the educator guy. And I said, what I need to be educated is in your experiences, in your neighborhood, in your school, in your family. You're the expert on your child. And this is where I sit and I listen. And for me, that was important for sort of having an aha moment that, like, I don't know what your impression is, but I need to be educated, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I'm hoping that we can take that sort of spirit into all of our neighborhood schools.
So just to Greg's point really quick. So when I got this job, I was very naive, and I believed that I was so excited to be doing what I love to do and waking up with my passion every day, that for the first 6 months, I just had blinders on. Somebody's paying me to do this. That's so cool. Until what I realized was that our entire neighborhood is full of trauma, and hurt people. And so as a Black woman coming into a Black neighborhood to share my passion, I was so excited. But they would rather listen to Greg, because what they've been told is that people who don't look like them are the ones that are educated. And so what I've had to learn as well is that I have to talk to people about what planning means. It's actually one of the things that I love to talk the most about. So as we have this conversation about innovation, which that word is a trigger for me, but like as we have this conversation about what it means for innovation, let's start with the basics. The basics being that kids that go to CMSD should be able to aspire to more than. They should be able to aspire to be planners, to be teachers, to be whatever it is they think to, but their world is so small. There's so many kids who live in the city of Cleveland who've never been to Beechwood before. So your world is your neighborhood. How do you provide education, experience, and exposure so that everyone gets to experience this city? I love Cleveland. You know why? Because I've been to the west side, I've been to the east side, and I've been all over this country, and I know that Cleveland is a wonderful place. But if you've never been anywhere else, you think this is a terrible place, or because you only see what you see, and you don't know that if you go somewhere else, it's not that much better than here, and that every place has problems. And so, to the councilman's point about keeping people, a part of keeping people is exposing them to the greater world so that they can see, and so that they can compare, and that they can know that this is a wonderful place, that you can grow, live, and have opportunity. You can raise a family here, and you don't have to leave to do it, because so many, particularly Black kids, you know why they leave the east side? Because they've been told their whole life that it's a terrible place. You should get out of here. And it's from everyone. Get out of this place. That the hood is a place to be overcome, as opposed to it just being your home. And so when we have these conversations about innovation and what it is, honestly, it's a park. It's picking up trash. It's showing people that their neighborhood, that this city is beautiful, and that it belongs to them.
Thank you, Khrys. I appreciate your comment about innovation as a term being triggering, because that has been such a part of our consciousness. Because I think that, there are a lot of us, images that come with innovation, which is sort of the tech bros that are coming to the neighborhood to sort of take over, most of them probably being white. And so I think, again, kind of getting to that redefinition of what innovation actually means. And this is a often used analogy, but it's the idea of, there is a seat for you at the table, but the table is already set. The table is already built for you. But then is there an opportunity to build your own table? And I think that's really what this redefining of what innovation means. There is an existing innovation economy that speaks to sort of like technology and corporations and things like that. But is it possible for people to bring and redefine what innovation means in their community? To get to your question, Michelle, about sort of job training, I think, job training is one of those things where it's sort of like, well, this is an already existing stream of pathways, and certainly we need those. We need that retooling, but we also kind of need to redefine, like, what are the assets that already are in the people? Like, what are the gifts that people are already bringing to the table that is a part of innovation? And finally, just to bring it to like a more like concrete level, the innovation community just exists as a concept right now. It isn't actually built yet. And part of the reason why we're starting to speak more about it, and by the way, the developer that was selected by a selection committee that included 4 residents from Hough. So from the very beginning, longtime residents are being a part of this conversation to define what this actual bricks and mortar project is going to be. But as a concept, there is no innovation community or innovation district in the United States that had racial equity at its center when it started. It was sort of always an afterthought, like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll build in the workforce development stuff. We'll bring in the schools to do technical, retraining. But I think what we really want to explore here is, can we put equity at the center of this? Again, by redefining innovation and creating space where literally everybody would feel welcome coming in. So less institutional, but more everybody. And I think that is up to, Black architects and Black designers to determine. But I think for us, we want to build that from the beginning and looking for people that have ideas and innovations to help with that, both from the community as well as from the institutions. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're coming up here on the last couple of minutes. And so just to sort of wrap this discussion up, I would like to ask, and this is a question for the entire panel, just what gives you optimism and hope about the work that you're doing and your ideal future? What do you see for Hough in the near future? And Joyce, if you would like to go first, or anyone, it's for the entire panel.
I'll jump in. So waking up every day and getting to come and do this job is the blessing of my life. And so I'm just, even on the days when it's hard, and it's hard a lot, I can't stop being grateful. I can't stop pinching myself that somehow I was chosen to be representative. I am one of 4 women, and really right now, like 3 women in the city of Cleveland that gets to say that they're the director of real estate development. It's an odd thing for a female, but particularly a Black female, to be able to do this work. And so I'm just, I can't not be hopeful because I'm here already. And so the thing that gives me hope is being able to pour that passion and the love that I have for this city into other people, being able to talk about it and being able to tell people how much I love it. I really used to drive my family crazy talking about how much I love Cleveland, and it would really get on their nerves. And now I just get paid to talk to people about it all day long. a quick story I'll share is that before I ever knew of a Famicos, before, this was ever a thing for me, I can remember being lost on Way Park one day and driving down what is now Heritage Lane and saying to my brother, we're just giving the hood away. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, we own the hood. We own our houses. We own these buildings, but we don't see value in what is ours. And so because we don't see the value, other people can come in and take what is rightfully ours. And so that's what keeps me getting up and coming to work every day, is being able to instill that love, that passion, so people can see the value. As Councilman said, $400 million is coming into the neighborhood. How much of it is going to Black people? How much of it? And so if we're going to do something about that, and I hope that I can continue to be able to do that work, the things that I'm looking at will be around, how do we get more Khrys Sheftons? How do we get more Joyce Huangs? How do we get that? So that there are other little Black girls, other little Asian girls that get to lead this work and fight for the communities and neighborhoods that they love, and get to participate at the table, to have the intelligent conversation. They say Black lives matter, Black professionals matter, Asian professionals matter. Because when I look like you, when I understand your experience, I can speak to that, I can advocate for it, I can fight for it. And that's what I do every day. And so those are the things that, that's the future of community development, is looking at it from the perspective of the people who live in the neighborhood, not the people who just want to build buildings in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much. And we have about 3 minutes left here. If maybe Greg,
I was going to say, man,
sure.
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. My family moved here to Cleveland. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and we were homeless. We lived in the Salvation Army, which was a shelter for women and children. And for those who are familiar with the homeless process, after you're in the shelter for a certain amount of time, they send you to transitional housing. And the first place that they sent me to was East 66 in Whitney. East 66 in Whitney. And I attended Case Elementary. And while I was attending school, we were in this state of homelessness. I saw trauma in the chat, just the trauma of not knowing where you're gonna live. I was asking this question earlier to someone, there's many children who don't have a bed. That may seem like crazy to some people. I can remember not having a bed. And what did that mean to me? Not having a place to say, I'm going to my bed. And when children get these things, they this is my toy, this is my bed. Not being able to say that something belongs to them, how does that impact them? How does that impact them as they continue to grow and become an adult? Never being able to say that this belongs to me. So growing up in this neighborhood and being able to say now that even though I'm on 66, this is where I first came to when I was home after homelessness, that this is also the block that Cleveland Foundation is now moving to and will be investing in. That right there does something to me. And I know that many of you see me out here, or you've seen me on the news, or you see me as that guy that's really passionate. But I'm so passionate about my community. And not just Hough, but Glenville, Collinwood, West Side, Tremont, Ohio City, Cam's Corner, all across the city, because what affects us, it affects everybody. What affects you, it affects me. And when we begin to look at life in that way, then your pain is my pain and your joy is my joy. And I can just say that my message to you is, don't sit back. Pac said, or Tupac Shakur said, he said, I didn't know if anybody understood Pac, but anyway, you got to kick the door in. Cleveland is a city that you have to kick the door in. You can't wait for somebody to say, oh, this is your time, this is your time. Nah, you can't tell me when my time is. That's why I'm heavily considering running for mayor, Because who can tell me when is our time to be successful? Who can tell us when is our time to make this city better? It has to be us. It has to be a multicultural effort. It has to be an effort where we have women who are in position of power, people of color who are in position of power. Because if you don't have diversity, you can't have innovation. If I have a room and everybody in the room is a doctor, their perspective is going to be one way, especially if they're all pediatricians, especially if they're all dentists, whatever. But when you have diverse ideas, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, then the innovation will also be diverse. So I'm excited to bring in Cleveland Foundation. We're excited to these new hotels. We're excited about all these great developments. And to Chris's point, the first question that myself and my good friend, Director Epstein over at Midtown, my good friend, Director John Analifo, the first question that we ask developers is not just on the construction side, but is there some partnership? Are you open to partnership, local JVs, joint ventures with minorities? Are you open to that? And you know what? Not one of them have said no. So the majority of these projects that you see are women. Right now we have a big project around League Park. We're building the first of almost 50 new homes. It's being led by Frontline Development, which is a Black woman and an Asian woman. You look at the homes that are being built off of 85th and Chester. These are minority development, Black men. You look at what's happening on 90th and Chester, workforce development. These are Black. So you're seeing a different type of developers happening in our city right now. And us who are in positions of power, which is all of you, we have to make sure that in the back rooms, when there's nobody else around, we have to be sure that we are speaking what needs to be spoken. So I'm happy to work with you all, and I appreciate you. And let's continue to fight this good fight together. This is our time.
Thank you so much. And I apologize if I interrupted you there. So we are out of time, unfortunately. So I'm just going to throw it back to our host, Michael Goldberg. I want to thank all of you so very much for being with us today. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Darrell. And to the panel, thank you so much for participating. And it was a great discussion. And for all of you who joined, I did put in the chat, we have a number of other programs that we offer to the community that potentially could be of interest, that range from Principles of Investing seminar that our second session will be next Monday night, to workshops, to speaker series. So we'd love to see many of you who are on joining us again. Again, thanks to our partners, the Social Justice Institute, Aisha Hardaway, Laura Kleinman and Greg from UCI, our friends at Carrie Murphy at Venture for America, that were all great partners in this series, and we look forward to doing it again soon. So thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your week.